Hey there, Scott here from SocialNRG Presents, and thanks for joining us. We've got a real treat for you with a very special episode from one of my personal favorite artists, the Metal Queen herself, Lee Aaron. Lee is a Canadian musician and one of the world's top metal singers who's had numerous hits in the 80s and 90s, such as Metal Queen, Whatcha Do to My Body, and Sex with Love. Her album Body Rock went multi-platinum and was voted one of the 20 most influential albums of the decade by Chart magazine. And Chart also listed such diverse musicians as Avril Lavigne, Alanis Morissette, and Shania Twain. Her later albums showed a wide artistic range and diversity, including jazz and a pop-jazz hybrid album as she moved forward in her career. Over the years, Lee's received 10 Juno nominations, a Much Music Best Video Award, and a pair of Best Female Vocal Awards, and a CMPA Songwriters Award. And today, Lee joins us from her home in Vancouver, BC, for an intimate look at her career and to bring us up to speed on what she's been working on next. So sit back, relax, and get ready, as SocialNRG now presents you with your Backstage Pass. Without further ado, let me introduce you to our regular guest lineup, our panel, who joins us each and every show. Charles, our engineer, how you doing, buddy?
Doing fantastic, Scott. Excited about our show today.
Yeah, this is going to be a great show. I can't wait. And of course, our resident rock star music aficionado and traveling troubadour, Mr. Mick Dalavie. How you doing, buddy? Where is he? There he is. How you doing, buddy?
I'm here. Hi, boys. What's going on?
Oh, I'm excited. This is an awesome show. This is going to be great.
I know you're such a fan of Lee Aaron. This is great.
I'm a huge fan, huge fan. Love her music. I think she's got probably in my opinion, one of the best voices in rock. And now in listening to her jazz, oh my gosh, she's got the pipes. Oh my God.
I know it's pretty remarkable, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I can't wait to get started. So why don't we bring her in and have her join us? There she is. Hi, Lee.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for being on this show. This is fantastic. You know,
I'm excited to be here in my own home.
I know, isn't it nice? It's kind of nice in a way. You can sort of stay at home, and the kids you don't need a babysitter, and
well, it's a whole new way of doing things now, right? So
yeah,
and it reminds me of a lot of the interviews that I would do for Europe, right?
Right.
They used to be telephone, but now more and more people are doing Zoom, right? Because I can't just get on a plane and go to Germany whenever they need me.
Now, how old are your kids now?
Our children, John and I, our children are 15 and 16. We have them very close together. So don't even talk to me about it. Our daughter just got her her learners, and I'm giving driving lessons. So
in winter.
Well, no, not today. I ixnay on the driving lessons for today. Forget it. Although I know
it's insane.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that this show's being taped. We're over in Victoria, BC, and you're over in Vancouver. And although we seldom get snow in this region, we just got dumped on right now. So this show's being taped on February 13th. So yeah, it's quite amazing out there. My poor little dog, she's a rescue from Mexico, and today I took her for a walk. She had no idea what was going on.
Oh yeah, I've got snow drifts, 3-foot snow drifts. It's crazy.
You guys are getting more snow than we are. We have about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 inches on the ground right now. It's not so bad, but enough to make a snowman. So I'm sure my kids are going to be out in the yard shortly, because it's absolutely novel for them to get snow, as opposed to me. I grew up in Winnipeg when I was a real young girl, and then I lived in the Toronto area. So, I'm the champ, man. I can drive in snow. I can drive in just about anything.
Well, I'm from Sault Ste. Marie, so I'm sort of right in between those. So I know all that stuff. Yeah. Now, I was going to say, now there's a couple things. For one thing, I said in the email that I love your husband's drumming. I think John is he's one of the great drummers. And I just want to reiterate this verbally, because I said it in the email. He filled in for the drummer in my band. God, it must have been years ago. So my band's been together for 32 years now. So I think John might have played with us possibly 20 years, well, actually it was before he was with you, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was before he was with you. And I remember him, no matter what song we threw at him, he would play it not only like the drummer of the song, he could also somehow get the tonalities. He would hit the snare in a different way to get that sort of the different tones out of the snare and stuff. So it wasn't just the same drum sounds. He's really, really musical.
He's very musical, and his drumming style.
Does he play anything other
than rock?
Sorry, we must have a real bad delay.
Do you know? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we have a very bad delay.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. But can you hear me?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, John plays all kinds of different styles. He has played in everything from folk bands. Did a lot of folk bands.
Am I on now?
Oh, sorry, Mick. Yeah, I think Mick's.
Okay, I must be on now.
We can edit this part out. It's not a problem. It's just Mick's.
Okay,
there we go. He's back.
Am I on now? Okay, because it might have been me. I switched to a different Wi-Fi thing.
You guys hearing me?
Oh yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the delay.
It's actually on Mick. It's on your side. If you.
Yeah, I realized that because I looked at my Wi-Fi. I've got 3 options for Wi-Fi, and for some reason it was picking up the upstairs one, which is on a delay. Okay,
cool.
So thank you for your patience. Anyway, we're talking about your husband John. Now we can do it in real time.
Yeah. So John, he plays all kinds of styles. In fact, when I met John, we were on a jazz tour across Canada with 3 different acts. But what they had done is put together the A team of everyone's band. I wanted my drummer at the time, but I had an argument with this other fellow, and it ended up, I brought my keyboard player and my horn player, and John was someone else's drummer. And that's how we met, is on a jazz tour. So we were actually started out playing jazz together, and we met and fell in love and ended up getting married that way. But so John has played in my jazz band, but he also plays folk. He also plays in Alex Brown's Boulevardiers. They do big band like Gene Krupa swing, that kind of stuff. And he's a great rock player as well. But what he brings, I feel, to my rock band sound is more of a very, like a nuanced kind of thing. Like it's like Charlie Watts meets Keith Moon or something like that, where it's not just the guy who's slamming all the time, but he can play perfectly to a click. John is not that kind of drummer, but I think that's what gives, especially my new rock music that I've been producing and releasing in the last, say, 6 years, a really unique sound. So I love his drumming.
Well, you got a great band. I mean, Dave Reimer he's one of my best friends, and he's one of the great singer bass players out there.
Oh, tell me about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I don't know your guitarist. The only way I know your guitarist is actually through that little birthday present we all did for Dave recently for the birthday song, but and he played on that. But I know I figure if he's playing with you, he's got to be a great player. So
well, just a little background on Sean Kelly. Sean Kelly is from Toronto. His background is playing with Carol Pope. He's played in Helix and Coney Hatch, but his main gig for quite a few years was Nelly Furtado.
Oh, wow.
He's also not only a fabulous player, but a very nuanced player as well. Sean can play everything from classical, like he has a classical guitar album out of Christmas music that he did, he had his own band, Crash Kelly, for years and years. So the reason I love working with him as well is he's capable of doing everything, so much more than just lunkhead rock, and that's what I feel. I need players like that in my band, and he's a great singer as well. So our deal, when we play live, we're not a band that we never use click. We never use anything that's triggered by click or programmed. It's the real rock and roll deal. If you're in my band, you have to be able to play and you have to be able to sing, and that's kind of how we do it, right?
I was going to say, so by the way, we were all commenting before you got on camera on how good your jazz stuff is. It's unbelievable. You are really a great, great singer. I mean, you were always a great rock singer, but when I heard your jazz stuff, I remember hearing it when it first came out, and I was going, that's Lee Aaron.
I hate to say it. I like you better than Diana Krall. I mean, you've got the chops. Oh my gosh.
Oh, well, I wouldn't even compare myself to Diana. I think she's fabulous, but she's different than I am. A little history. I grew up from a very young age singing in choirs and musical theater when I was young. So I had quite I would say, a rich background in being well versed in jazz and blues as well as Broadway and show tunes. And so in the early 90s, when basically everybody who was anybody who was associated with hair metal or classic rock, whose careers were completely devastated by the grunge movement, I took a year off in 1996 because I had to go bankrupt. It's a long story. I don't even want to get into it, but my manager and lawyer had gotten me into a situation where I had borrowed close to $500,000 from various sources, including the Federal Business Development Bank, and to develop a new label. But unfortunately, the industry didn't want anything to do with any names that were associated with that genre of music. So my career just kind of fell off, went for a landslide, like many, many other artists of that era. And I had to really rethink what I wanted to do. And when I came back, I thought, I love this music. What about singing it? And I didn't really think of it as a big career move. I just started, people were bugging me to play live again. So I just started playing a few nightclubs in the Vancouver region, doing jazz with a piano player. And then that evolved into having a bass player and a horn player. And then that evolved into doing a record because so many people kept asking about it. But my approach to jazz was always to bring the Lee Aaron edge to it, kind of like in the same type of way that Nina Simone or I would say Etta James or, Annie Ross or, a lot of those singers had a very,
an edge,
a nasty edge to the way that they approach jazz.
Yeah.
So I was sort of bringing, you can take the girl out of rock, but you can't, take the rock out of the girl.
I think that's why so many women admire Etta James, actually. It's because of that juxtapose of her voice between that smooth to the edge, and everybody can kind of relate to both of that, no matter what kind of singer you are.
Oh, she was, absolutely devastating. She was such a good singer. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So you were born in Belleville. How much time did you spend there?
Not very long. It's interesting because I'm writing some memoirs / autobiography right now. And I was trying to remember things about living there. I only lived there till I was 2. And then I moved to Winnipeg. The Winnipeg.
Yeah, because I love Belleville. It's one of the sweetest little towns. And a really good friend of mine has a theater there. His name is Mark Rashot. He's actually quite a good musician as well. He actually plays, Clarence Clemon, who played with Bruce Springsteen. And of course, he passed away and his nephew took his place in the E Street Band.
Have you seen the Letters to You documentary?
No.
Oh, it's fabulous. You have to watch it. I don't know.
Oh, wait a minute. That's a Clarence Clemon one. Yes, I did see it.
No. It's brand new. It's his nephew that comes in to play with the band. They filmed it in about 5 days in Bruce's studio in New Jersey. And it's a whole bunch of new material that he wrote, but also he revives a couple of his early tunes as well with a new approach. And basically the band said, Bruce, we don't even want you to play us anything. Just play it to us when we get to the studio so we don't have too much time to overthink it. And he comes in and he just plays them a bunch of songs on acoustic guitar. And they cut this album called Letters to You. It's so good. It's so good.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not even historically a big Bruce Springsteen fan, but it's unbelievable. Again, I don't know that it's just generally out there on Netflix. We have a network called Plex here that we pay for, and it's available on Plex, but it is so good. So yeah, I'm just saying, Letters to You, Bruce Springsteen, you have to, and
I'll
it's
look that up.
released as an album now as well. So.
Well, I'm sorry, his name fails me. His nephew, what's his nephew's name? Do you recall it?
You know what? It escapes me as well at this moment.
Yeah, because he's the one that plays sax with him now. Anyway, I was going to say that Mark Rashot has a band with him as well, and so Mark sent me his album a little while ago, and it's really interesting. It's almost like some of it's almost like beat poetry. It's a real eclectic sort of album.
Cool.
Yeah,
I'm
really
not familiar with his material, but yeah. Cool.
We were talking about 1989. In 1989, we were talking, in emails, that in 1989, I happened to play Toronto for the first time in my life, actually. Even though I'm from Sault Ste. Marie, when I moved to go on the road, I came out west. And I played in Toronto a few dates with Frank Soda.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm sure you
Love
know
Frank.
Frank. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, and of course, it's so funny because we're rehearsing, and Frank's one of these guys who's like, yeah, just jump in, you know, no matter what song it is. You don't know the song, oh, just jump in, you know. So anyway, so we had a couple of rehearsals, and it was me and Mark LaFrance and Frank Soda, and we all brought some original material to the thing to do this tour. And we had one rehearsal. We didn't know each other's stuff. Frank says, oh, it's okay. I got a friend. We can rehearse in Toronto. And our first show is this little outdoor thing, not to worry about. The little outdoor thing, they ended up calling it Livestock 89. There was 35,000 people there. we show up and I'm going, I don't even know the songs yet, you know. And we get up there, and of course, Frank's jumping around, blowing things off his head. So, it went over great. But it's so funny because it was a 3-day festival, and that particular night, Colin James closed the show, and he was magnificent. He was right at the pinnacle of his career when he first was hitting, and you know, he was like the new guy, and he was so well respected. And so after, they had videotaped this entire show. And so everybody goes into the media bus later to watch the rushes from the show. Now I'm expecting to watch Colin James. No, they play me getting the audience to sing Gilligan's Island in the middle of the afternoon. there's all these drunk people. The skipper too. Because the promoter says that was the highlight of the whole 3 days. It was one of those magical things, but anyway, the reason I brought that up is because that was right when you were like you were all over Much Music in those days.
Yeah.
It seemed like every time I turned on Much Music, you were on.
Yeah, and from 1989 until about 1992, you know, I joke around now. I say that was my 5 minutes, but I was like sort of like the it girl on Much Music for a while because the Body Rock album and like Body Rock was close to triple platinum. Some Girls Do was over platinum in Canada. And at that time, I don't know, I just seemed to hit with the right songs at the right time, with the right visuals, and Much Music was all over. I was in heavy rotation. So, you know, the funny thing about that, when I met my husband, John, and we had to do a rehearsal for this jazz tour, like I said, and it was quite awkward because previous to him and I meeting we met in 2001, in the spring of 2001. And again, my friend Ralph Alfonso, who worked at Network Records, was orchestrating the entire thing. And he said, you know, we're going to put together this A team and we all have to rehearse each other's material because the one band is going to play for all three artists because that was the only way financially to make this jazz tour work from coast to coast, right?
Matt, can I interject? Who else was on the bill with you?
Dave Rave from Teenage Head. He does it like a jazzy thing as well. And then Ralph Alfonso had a whole beat poetry thing going on as well. I don't know if it was sort of like, you know, Jack Kerouac meets Leonard Cohen kind of vibe. And he would get up and he did you know, it was very Leonard Cohen-y. He did a talk poetry kind of thing over music, which was really, really quite great. And but he needed a headliner. So he asked me because he needed somebody who was going to draw people in to see the show. I don't mean that in a braggy kind of way, but that's why I was invited onto this tour.
Of course. But
financially to make it work, they had to put together the A team. So I had called John Cody several times in the past to sub for my regular drummer, a guy named Matt Pease, when he was unavailable, because my horn player, Graham Howell, kept saying, you know, you got to work with John Cody. He's amazing. You'd love his drumming style. He tunes his drums so well. He's great. He'd be great in your jazz band. So I had called and left messages on a few occasions for John and said, hi, John Cody, this is Lee Aaron calling. And, you know, my drummer can't make this show. And I was hoping you might be available. I never even got a phone call back from this guy, right? And I was like,
playing hard to get.
Well, no, he's like, you know, I just thought you were like this dumb rock chick, like little tart who pranced around, you know, in, you know, her little crop tops and, you know, little leather jackets. And he just thought I was like some kind of like record company product that was being pushed to the forefront. So that was his experience with me. So he had no interest even in really meeting me or playing with me. And well, again, I'm not meaning to be boastful, but our first hour of our first rehearsal, the first day, he said he was blown away. He said, I had no idea how good of a singer you were, that you were really very, very musical, and how much talent you had. And of course, obviously, we're married and we have children now. So he did a complete 360 on me.
Well, it worked very well for you. That's amazing. Yeah, I was stunned. I remember, now something comes to my mind's eye. Back when you first started your jazz thing, did you play a place on Hastings Street called the Atrium? Do you remember?
Probably.
It was in a little hotel right near the P&E.
Oh, a little hotel? Or
well, it was like, medium-sized hotel. I think it might be a Best Western now or something.
Probably. I did. You know what? I was working with an agency out of Vancouver, and I realized early on that if I was going to play places like the Jazz Cellar, that I was going to be playing for $50 in a meal.
Yeah.
And, so I was, at that point, it had evolved to the point where I had a bass player, keyboard player, and a horn player. I was a 4-piece. And I realized that the only way to actually make money doing this was to play the high-end hotel circuit. So I was doing, the revolving restaurant at the top of the thing. And, I did that. I was in the, the Olympic Hotel right there at the Pan Pacific. I started doing these high-end rooms because they paid well. And I had a 4-piece act and I wanted to be able to pay them decently. However, what I didn't quite realize was that in the jazz world, that was like selling out to do those venues. They were like, that's not what you do, right? And I'm like, how does anybody make a living doing this, right? Mm-hmm. So the strange thing was, in every other province, in every other jazz festival, when I did the jazz and I released my album Slick Chick, I actually had a great promotional team out of New York. It was a former promo lady that I worked with Bebop Promotions. She had me doing CBC stuff. She had me do all over Canada. So I was doing the Jazz Festival, the Harbourfront Festival in Toronto. I was doing the Jazz Festival in Ottawa. But in Vancouver, where I had played these high-end hotels, the Jazz Festival didn't want to touch me because it wasn't respected. So that was kind of a blow. But the weird thing is I ended up in the Jazz Festival Guide anyway, because the hotels that I worked with that were involved in the Jazz Festival thing would hire me anyway. So it was this weird catch-22 where I wasn't officially in the Jazz Festival with the Vancouver Jazz Festival, but they had to advertise me in the Jazz Festival Guide because I was hired by the hotels anyway. Right. It was weird. It was weird. And, and I was working with some really great players, Tilden Webb. I don't know if you're familiar with great guy named Brent Gubbles, Danny Parker on bass. I'm just trying to think of some of the other people that I worked with, some really, really fabulous players.
Well, it's interesting. I remember when I first started working with Randy, he'd always wanted to do a jazz album. He always sort of dabbled in jazz anyway, even songs like Undone is jazzy, Looking Out for Number One and all this sort of thing. So because Lenny Breau was his guitar teacher as a young boy in Winnipeg, he always had this thing about wanting to do a jazz album sort of in tribute to Lenny Breau's legacy. And so, and that was the thing. We toured all over the place in every little nook and cranny, small little places, and it's weird because Randy was paying me my regular wage. And we weren't flying to gigs, let's put it that way. We were driving a lot. There was scaled down things for that, but a lot of it came out of his pocket just because he wanted to do it. It was an important thing for him to do it. It was interesting, but once again, he was panned totally. He was panned as not being real jazz.
Well, I wasn't panned. That was that was.
Well, you weren't panned, but you were frowned upon in Vancouver. I guess, sorry, I used the wrong terminology. You were frowned upon because where you played, but Randy actually had a lot of bad press because they didn't, from the jazz aficionados. I remember our first gig in Toronto.
It's a very weird world, I have to say that. So yeah, again, because I started the inception of the jazz thing was local, and I was playing, Babalu and places.
Right.
I'm just trying to think. That's where Michael Bublé started, right?
Right. Yeah.
Babalu. And in fact, one night I walked in there, Michael's like, Lee, you got to get on stage and sing with me. And you know, the sad thing is he had all these great jazz players, and he even came to me backstage. He says, you know, the guys in my, maybe I shouldn't be saying this. He said, confided to me. He said, I'm a fan. I would love for you to get up and sing with me. I'm going to tell you something right now. The guys in my band think I'm cheesy, but I'm a hard worker. And my heart was broken when he said, I thought, oh my God. So I'm like, of course I'll get up and sing with you. And look at him now, right?
Yeah.
But the jazz guys didn't really respect him. You know, again, and look at him now. It is a bit of a weird world, but I have to say, when I played the Top of the Senator in Toronto, which is that's
the one that we played in Toronto. That was our first gig. Yeah.
The Globe and Mail loved me. Like, I got very good reviews, but I, you know, and I don't mean to, again, like, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but this music for me it wasn't like I just went, hey, jazz is, the whole swing thing is kitschy in the mid 90s. I'm just going to jump on this bandwagon. These were my roots. I grew up singing this stuff. So it was very authentic for me. And I think that it was probably kind of hard to pan me. Because it was genuinely part of my soul, right? And it still is. I mean, you know, if you listen to the Diamond Baby Blues album, which was my 2018 release, you know, I covered an old Coco Taylor tune called I'm a Woman, which was the Bo Diddley tune, I'm a Man, reimagined for her. And then again, reimagined for me. It's pretty much pure blues, right? And, but we do it a la Zeppelin-esque style, right? But that's part of my whole quintessential sound, I think, is you know, that the roots of music like that, for sure.
Well, the one thing that's interesting about you, and there's another instance where this has happened, and they actually bridge, is because your real name isn't Lee Aaron. You just adopted the name of the band that you were in.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. Well,
and the same thing happened with Alice Cooper. You know, somebody had to be named Alice Cooper in the band, and the record company said basically, so Vince Fournier took the name Alice Cooper. And interestingly enough, you also worked with Bob Ezrin, who was very instrumental on the whole Alice Cooper thing, which is an incredible bridge. Now, I'd love to ask you a bit about Bob Ezrin. What was it like working with him? I
was quite young. I was 22. What had happened is, after the Metal Queen album, we had written a bunch of tunes, and we were back in the studio. We were in Phase One Studios in Toronto with Paul Gross, the producer who was part owner of the studio, but also he was a wonderful producer. He produced the Metal Queen album for us. And, but I don't know, like 2 weeks into production, you know, and while, sorry, let me backtrack a bit. While we were doing this album, Bob Ezrin was next door in the I think we were in B studio and he was in A studio. And he was doing a big, like, multi-band compilation thing with Motley Crue, Lita Ford, Ozzy Osbourne, all the quintessential big American rock acts of that time. He was doing this album that featured all of them, but he kept coming next door to our studio and popping his head in and listening to what we were up to. And he was very, very interested in me, very interested in my voice and the songs and what we were doing. And coincidentally, 2 weeks into production, 2 to 3 weeks into production, poor Paul was, one of the things he did for leisure was play racquetball. He was hit very hard in the eye with a racquetball. So his vision was all messed up. He was bandaged up. He had to bow out of producing the album for several weeks for his eye to heal. And we were like, like this, the record company's like, we're in the studio. What are we going to do? And when Bob Ezrin found out about our circumstances, he went right into Attic Records and he said, let me take over. My project's finishing in a week. I'd love to produce this girl. Wow. And that's how I ended up working with Bob, is Bob asked to come in and take over the project. And he brought Dick Wagner up, who was his buddy from Alice Cooper days. Right. And so Dick came in and, you know, again, we were just like, I think I was 22, John was 25, John Lalbany. And he brought Dick in to kind of massage some of our tunes into a place that he felt he could work with. And yeah, that's how we ended up working together. Bob is the guy who found Barely Holding On, which was our European single. Actually, I think it was our single in Canada too, but that song truly broke us in Europe that year. Wow. And yeah, I mean, honestly, the era that it was, I think there were some shenanigans going on when John and I weren't around, but it was.
Now, what's John Lalbany doing now?
John has a studio, a recording studio. John left the band in 1995, 96.
Because you guys wrote a lot of songs together.
Yeah, he was my writing partner for 12 years, and we met on the production of the Metal Queen album in 1983, and he was in the band until 1990, almost 1996. So yeah, we worked together for 12 years. He was my co-writer and my partner in crime. Great guy. But his dad always said to him, and his dad was a fairly notable hockey player for the Sault Ste. Marie team, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
There you go.
He was a goalie.
Oh, wow.
In fact, Ken Dryden mentioned Johnny Lalbany, John's dad, in his book. Yeah, as being one of his influences. And his dad always said to him, know when to get out. And I don't know why that always resonated with John. So John, when the whole grunge movement happened, he was just like, this is my ticket to leave. And he wanted to start a studio. He was very much into the production into things. So he moved to Nashville and he opened up a studio called Sonic Eden. It still exists. He's still doing recording projects down there. But he's also very involved. He was also a photographer. He took a lot of my promotional pictures in the mid 1980s as well. And he is doing architectural photography. And I think he actually makes just as much money from that now as he does from recording.
Wow.
So he's a very multi-talented guy.
Wow. Yeah. That's pretty fascinating. Well, so what was the outcome of the Bob Ezrin sessions? Did anything happen out of that? Was there any extra touring you got? Any extra connections from that at all? Or was it sort of just a thing that sort of played itself out?
Well, we had a European tour booked. So we ended up on tour before the album was completely mixed. That was in 1985. So we were put on tour with Bon Jovi in the spring of 1985. They were on the 7,800 degree Fahrenheit tour, I think it was called. And
that was the album that he had Runaway on, right? Is that correct?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So we were on an opening tour slot with Bon Jovi. The album was not quite mixed. I remember Bob was sending me mixes when I was on that tour, and we went back and forth. And then but we were gaining a lot. It wasn't my first time touring, and we were gaining a lot of momentum. A lot of the press was very, very interested in us. And then right in the middle of that tour, the album came out, and it was on a small label then called Roadrunner out of Belgium.
Oh, I know that label. Yeah. That
album broke huge because the timing of it was just perfect. So what ended up happening from that Bob Ezrin production was that they released Barely Holding On as a single. And that album sold like 100,000 albums in 6 weeks. So we were back by the fall, headlining the same venues that we opened up for Bon Jovi in.
Wow.
That year. So that was a result of that Bob Ezrin album. It really broke us in Europe. Canada was a struggle. Ralph Alfonso used to work he eventually worked for Network, but he used to work for Attic Records. He and I went on a promo tour for Barely Holding On across Canada. And I got to tell you, it was difficult because Canadian radio, they just didn't get me. You know, my first few albums, people knew of me because, of course, the Metal Queen video got some air. That was the inception of Much Music. So it was one of the very first, videos to be played. I mean, I guess you can call it viral back then on Much Music, but Canadian radio did not play me. It was real. They did not get, this was the land of, Anne Murray and Joni Mitchell, and there were not girls doing a more aggressive form of music at that time. So I felt like it was beating our head against the wall doing that promo tour because radio was just like, not, it was at the bottom of their record pile, that album. They were not that interested in it. They just didn't seem to get a girl making more, like rock music. Of course, that a decade later with Alanis and Avril Lavigne and completely changed that landscape, right?
Yeah.
But
right around the time of '89 in Toronto, when you were like all over, like as a matter of fact, I think we have a picture of it somewhere. We'll probably throw it up on an overlay and post on this, but there's a picture of you and Gallagher on the cover of TV Guide. I mean, you were huge. You were all over the place. Yeah. Dan Gallagher.
Oh yeah. Danny was, he was one of the infamous hosts of Much Music back then.
Yeah. Yeah. I've met him a few times. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. I knew all those guys really well. Wonderful. It was a real fun crew of people back then, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, Much had the Much Awards. So he and I, in 89, of course, and 89, I think it was the 1990 Much Music Video Awards. We, my album I was a big star back then. And yeah, they invited me and Danny to co-host the Much Awards. So that's why we ended up on the cover of TV Guide together.
In 89, when I first really took note of you in a big way, because you were all over the place, but that was also around the time that Alana Miles' album started hitting.
Yes.
I think she just, yeah. Now, did that benefit you in a way? Because it brought another girl who's doing like her rock wasn't as aggressive as yours. It was more pop rock, but did that help sort of elevate you a bit, or was it? Do you recall that era?
Well, what I have to say about, yes, but what I have to say about that is by the time my music evolved to 1989, the most aggressive album I ever made was Metal Queen in 1984. And you know what? Metal Queen, I'm sure the only song you've heard from that album is Metal Queen. Am I correct?
Yes,
right.
Yes.
So people only know that song. That was probably the most aggressive song on the album, but it was the album title. So the choice was, let's release that as a single. Metal Queen was a very melodic hard rock record. And my music just continued to evolve. I mean, in 1987, I did an album with Peter Coleman, who was Pat Benatar's producer. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. That spawned, that was a very, very melodic rock record. It had the Only Human single. Only Human was a top 40 hit on Canadian radio. So by 1987, because it was a ballad, radio went on that in 1987 for me, right?
Oh, okay.
Then
that was your self-titled album, right, Lee Aaron?
That's correct. Yeah, by 1989, Body Rock was a pop album with, let's be honest, it was a pop album with big guitars.
Yeah, what you do with my body.
But finally, Canada was ready for a girl doing that kind of music. Right. And then, of course, Chris Ward, who was Alana's boyfriend and partner for many years, Chris Ward and Dave Tyson wrote all those songs for Alana Miles. She had this amazing, great voice. She put out this album. So her and we put out these albums simultaneous to each other. And Canadian radio, they were just finally ready. AOR was ready for those albums. And so Alana's album, of course, went, she, of course, had a lot of Much Music muscle behind her because of the Chris Ward connection.
Right.
I mean, let's be honest, this music business is all about connections. But that did help me because they were like, here's Alana Miles and here's Lee Aaron, who's done another great pop hard rock record. So both of those albums were able to coexist in the scene. And they, I think they elevated each other really. And then of course, a couple of years later, there was Sass. So her and myself, Sass, we were sort of the initial women doing that. And of course, Darby, there was Darby and a couple of years before myself, there was Darby.
And Hollywoods as well.
Pardon me?
Hollywoods with Toronto.
I was going to say Toronto.
Yeah.
Toronto, her and Sharon Alton, there were those girls as well. And, but I think that, I'd like to think we kind of paved the way for artists like Alanis Morissette and Avril.
Well, you certainly did. There's no two ways about it. And in 89, you were, like I said, Alana Miles was just starting to come up in the ranks. I think she had that Love Is was the big single first came out. And you were all over the place. I mean, you'd hear Love Is probably a fair amount because of Christopher Ward, I'm sure. But because I don't think that was the best single on the album, but it was the initial single. But you were all over the place. It's like I said, every time I turned on Much Music, you were on.
I was also on tour for like 14 months straight.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. And great stuff. Really, and really electric looking videos too. They just like, they grabbed you. There was so much color and excitement in those videos. It was amazing.
Well, and they were fun. They were a lot of fun songs. I love that. That's like, they were upbeat and, you know, they were great party songs, dance songs. Yeah.
Well, about those videos, you know, I had done, you know, multiple videos up to that point, but the sort of general vibe with a lot of the videos that I was doing was the, you know, the dark, moody lighting, the fire and brimstone, you know, rock look. And when it was time to do those videos, I was at Attic Records and they showed me a bunch of reels of people that they were considering for production of the videos. And all I saw there, I saw a video reel from this guy named Don Allen. I'm trying to remember what the name of his company was at that time. But they were a company out of Toronto. They had done stuff. And the thing that grabbed me is he had done a L'Oreal hair commercial. And it was all white background and lots of movement and things, lots of color. And I went, that's what I want for the What You Do. I don't want fire and brimstone. I want fresh, fun, you know, healthy, fun-faced. I want to bring all these rough and tumble looking rock guys into this environment. And that's how we ended up coming up with the video. And the idea for that as well was to sort of turn, for What You Do to My Body video was to sort of turn the sexual stereotypes, because they were just rampant in the 1980s. It's like every rock video of every rock, you know, like Motley Crue or even Bon Jovi at that time, you know, they
Poison,
all had, like,
Cinderella. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like they all had the bikini clad, beautiful model types hanging off their arm to elevate their masculinity. And I thought, no, we're not, you know, we're going to bring a bunch of good looking guys into this video and we're going to make them do normal everyday things like paint our backdrop or hold puppies or, you know, just fun stuff like that. And because I was really, you know, I was really conscious of the fact that I want women to like my act as well. I want this to have housewife appeal, right? You know, and so that was really the impetus behind those videos.
Well, the ultimate compliment, I think it was a description of back in the day, David Lee Roth was one the ultimate thing. And I think you achieved this, is that women wanted to be with him and men wanted to be like him. And you were doing that as a woman, you know, men wanted to be with you, women wanted to be like you. You know, that's the ultimate that you can achieve as a performer, I think.
Well, that was actually parroted to me from the record label many, many times, but that was never any kind of artistic motivation for me. You know, I did what I did, and I tried to choose people that that I felt were talented. You know, even on the Some Girls Do album, I was at the label and they brought me in a bunch of photographic, the photography books where you get to look at and see the photographer's work. And I don't know if you are aware of who Floria Sigismondi is.
No, I'm sorry. I don't.
Oh, she went on to do videos for David Bowie and Nine Inch Nails, and she did the Runaways movie that just came out recently. She moved to
I wasn't aware of that because I knew about that movie. I guess I never checked it out.
She's really a tremendously Italian, a talented Italian photographer. And she was living in Toronto, and she was the girlfriend of one of the guys that was in the What You Do to My Body video. And when I saw her book, I was like, wow, this is art. And so she was my photographer of choice. So she shot the Some Girls Do cover, and she shot the entire inside layout. And she also, the first video that Floria Sigismondi ever did was my video for Peace on Earth.
Wow.
I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but yeah.
Sorry, Scott wants to talk to you for a second.
Scott.
Yeah. So Lee, back then, obviously, you know, you're breaking ground as a female artist and all that in a world that was largely dominated by guys. Did you have a lot of work cut out for you to maintain or or your creative control over what you wanted this to become for yourself? Or was that an issue that you had to deal with back then?
Well, my answer to that is yes and no. In my heyday, you know, when back when record companies could make a living from selling records, and they were spending in excess of $250,000 making all your records for you on production, on, you know, marketing and publicity. And like, I mean, we would easily just pay $5,000 to have someone take pictures of me, right? Mm-hmm. To have a good photographer. Videos were, you know, like $60,000, $70,000. Back then, I would say that I worked closely with the label. You know, they ultimately had the final say over what went on because they were your investor. They were pumping all this money into you. So if they weren't happy with the direction things were going in, but they also were, you know, they also realized, you know, that, you know, I was the person creating the art. I've always been a songwriter. I've always, from about 1984 onward, I really tried very hard to wrestle more control of my image, because the early years for me, I had, and I don't want to talk too much about this, but I had a manager that pushed me. I signed with him when I was 18 years old, 17, I think. From the age of 17 till about 21, I was pushed very hard into he was really trying to market me as in a very sexualized manner as a pinup girl. And I was always uncomfortable with that. And the downside of that is that, again, music was my first love. I mean, my first band, I played saxophone and keyboards, and, you know, we were a band, and I had always written my own songs, but that whole sexualized image really eclipsed the music part. And so to many people out there, and a lot of the media, they just saw me as a pretty face that was a product of someone's imagination, not an artist. And that drove me nuts.
Hence your husband John's perception of you.
Yes,
like
exactly.
How sad is that? You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's sad, because, and that's what happened with that whole misogynistic thing that happened with music all along. Like, women were pigeonholed so much more than men. Like, well, men weren't. Let's face it. You know, men didn't have to put up with that crap.
Well, and especially in the mid 1980s, that's what it was all. You know, it was a very sexualized, and very much an era of women being objectified on video, you know, and on album covers, right? Mm-hmm. You know, it was very, very common to see a bunch of women, you know, in bikinis, all hosed down, washing a car for some like artist, you know.
That was sort of the impetus for my question, is because really you want to stand forward facing because of what you're creating, not because of what you look like or how you photograph. It's the art, it's the music itself. That's what you're struggling for, correct?
Well, and I got to tell you, the song Metal Queen was sort of a pushback against that. It was my, you know, after everything that happened to me when I was younger, and then, you know, I wrote the song Metal Queen with the idea that, you know what, this is going to be an archetype for women. This is going to be a strong woman taking charge. You know, it was supposed to be a feminine, strong I'm not really articulating this very well, but, you know, a female archetype for women, you know, someone who is in charge, someone who is a matriarch of her reality. But the video, you know, was supposed to be like this fantasy world where a woman is in charge of everything and she triumphs over the forces of evil. But it was because of the era in which it was released. I think it was greatly misunderstood, right? And you know, as a result, in the UK and Australia, that video was banned because there's a part where they set me on fire and I break free and I take control. But the censor board, there was all that Tipper Gore censorship stuff going on at that time, and they were like, "This is violence against women," and I'm like, "No, this is about a woman, triumphing over that type of abuse, right? And anyway, it was really misunderstood. And that's probably one of my regrets, but the reality is I get to re-explain it now to people, and people understand it a lot better. And my true fans always got it. You know what I mean? So there you go.
Well, how many albums you see out there in the 80s, where there's a woman bikini clad with bruises all over her and a guy standing behind her with a whip, and that was acceptable. What is going on with that? Oh,
believe me, we've come a long, long way, and I read an article where Ann Wilson was talking about that as well, that there was, we had as women in the 80s doing rock music, we had so many mountains to climb, so many, it was a constant battle against sexual stereotypes, because the reality, unfortunately, was, if you look good, you can't possibly be talented. You must be some kind of record company product, right? But of course, if you look good, you're fighting against the record company wanting to exploit that, because good looks sell records, right? So I felt like I was always trying to justify myself, and I should never have had to have felt that way, right?
I'm ashamed to say that I've been that way about boy bands, where I've thought it's all a product, it's all crap, it's all this, it's all that. Then you find out the actual talent that's involved there, like a Justin Timberlake. I mean, good Lord.
The guy's badass, totally.
No kidding. Yeah. And there's a guy that I totally dismissed because he was in a boy band when he first came out. You're like, how stupid am I? You end up, I have to be careful about things sometimes, because this has nothing to do with our subject, but it does in a way. I was homophobic till about the time that I was 38. Why? Never met a homosexual in my life. Never did. Why was I homophobic? When I did meet homosexuals and I got to work in conjunction with them, I went, what the hell's the matter with me? Like, all of a sudden, I woke up. And so when I see people now that are still homophobic, I have to draw back and go, wait a minute, you were that guy before. Just because they haven't seen the light yet doesn't mean they're not gonna, or you at least have to understand that you were that dumb too. You know what I mean?
Well, and we are kind of all products of the cultural information we're being fed, right? Mm-hmm. And which is how half of America voted for Trump, right?
Yeah. I know, it's insane.
You really want to go there?
I can't even go there, but can you guys, I have to let my dogs out.
That's okay.
That's okay. The floor right here, and they're like, let me out. We have to go to the bathroom. 1 sec.
That's okay. That's fair.
There we go.
I was going to say, when did you move to Vancouver? What year was that? And where were you in your career when you moved to Vancouver too? I need to know that.
I moved to Vancouver in late 1995, officially in 96, but I kept a place in Toronto, and I went back and forth for 1996, 95, 96. Where I was at in my career was that I had done the Some Girls Do album in 91, which went platinum, by the way. But I'll tell you an interesting story. Sorry.
Sure. That's why we're here.
And I'm not blaming anyone per se, but I got off Attic Records in 1992. But I'll tell you what sent me over the edge. After all of the work that I felt that I'd done to legitimize myself as a songwriter, like on the Some Girls Do, when that single came out, there were some industry people that actually called my manager and said, wow, fantastic, great, congratulations on Lee's new hit, blah, 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 because it went into heavy rotation once again on Much Music. Who wrote the hit for her? And I was like, I wrote it.
Oops.
Oh my gosh, why am I still being treated like I don't have talent here? It was so infuriating for me. And anyway, I'd written a song called Sex with Love. And the inspiration behind that song was old-fashioned values, morality. If you're going to be intimate with someone, it's a great idea if you actually care about them, right? Sex with Love.
That's a great song.
Right. It was a fun song, but I said to the label, please do not release this as a single, because I really think that the media will probably have a heyday with it. They won't get it. They'll just see the word sex and run with that, right? Well, I did not get listened to. It ended up being a single. So I had lots of splaining to do, right? Every time. And without my knowledge, and it wasn't Al Mayer. Al Mayer, I love the man to this day, Al Mayer from Attic Records, the VP there. It was someone beneath Al Mayer in the marketing department made a decision. They took out an ad. Do you remember a publication called The Record?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So it was Canada's Billboard. It was the publication. And it was the picture from the Some Girls Do album cover. And it was a big ad, and it said, "Here's sex on the radio." And it listed all of the stations playing the new single. It said, "See sex on TV." And it listed all of I'm getting emotional even talking about this. It listed all of this, like Good Rockin' Tonight out West and Much Music and all of the video stations that had gone on the single. And then it said, "See sex on tour." And it listed all my tour days.
Oh, man.
I lost my mind.
Oh my God.
Well, David Farrell who was the editor in chief at that time, phoned my manager and he said, "Have you seen this? Lee is going to go crazy." And he was right. I did. So it was the left hand not talking to the right hand. Someone made an executive decision. They didn't pass it by me for approval. I would have never approved an ad like that. I felt like it unraveled everything I had worked so hard for in my career. It was a super big button for me, I have to say. And at that point, we went into talks about me leaving the label and moving in a different direction. I just felt like, anyway, I don't want to go on. But anyway, that was the beginning of me making some changes. I started my own label. I put out Emotional Rain in 1994, which was well received critically, but it didn't sell nearly the albums that I had sold in the past because the whole landscape of music, grunge had happened and the whole landscape had changed.
And not to mention the machine behind it too.
Right. Well, exactly. And then I ended up on Emotional Rain. I hired Don Binns and Don Short from a band called the Sons of Freedom because I loved them. Yeah. I thought they were the most fantastic grunge band from the West Coast. I wanted them on my album because I was only 29 years old at that time. And I thought, I'm just going to keep, I didn't realize that my big heyday was over. I was like, I'm just going to keep making rock and roll records and I'm just going to adopt part of this into my new sound because I loved grunge music. I loved Soundgarden and Nirvana and Pearl Jam. And I thought, wow, what a great direction. Corporate rock was getting really crappy anyway. So this is a wonderful change. And that's when I made the Emotional Rain record, again, with the rhythm section from Sons of Freedom. And then I brought Reeves Gabrels from David Bowie's Tin Machine and Knox Chandler, who had played in the Psychedelic Furs. I brought them up because this is right around the time when John Lalbany decided he didn't get it anymore and he wanted to do the studio and move to Nashville. So I brought these like infamous, new music players up to work on my album. And I mean, I'm really proud of that record. I think it sounded great, but it didn't sell. It didn't sell the way that my previous albums had. And if you can hear that woof, that's my dog wanting to do that.
What kind of dog? What kind of dog do you have?
I have a golden retriever and a Cavalier. One sec.
Oh, lovely.
Awesome.
Oh, come on in. Come on in, buddy. Okay. Anyway, and at that time, when I worked on that album, I forged quite a friendship with Don Binns and Don Short. And they said to me, if you ever want to make a completely different kind of record, come to the West Coast and make an album with us. We would love it. We all loved working together. So that's what I did. And then just everything kind of fell apart. My manager, when he saw that my albums were selling, 40,000 copies, which would be great today,
Yeah.
Not 200,000 copies. He just made an executive decision he took a job. My manager took a job working for Koch International, out of the United States. He became their foreign licensing rep, and he just didn't want to be a manager anymore. So I suddenly found myself in this situation where I didn't really have a manager, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. So I just sold everything, and I moved to the West Coast, and I made an album written off the floor with the guys in the Sons of Freedom. And we didn't call that album Lee Aaron because I realized that being Lee Aaron was the kiss of death with the industry
really?
at the time.
Is that how you felt that? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was like, so are you guys actually interested in this? I could go on.
No, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I think this is quite good conversation.
Well, so I made this album. I'm still proud of this album. I think it was artistically a fantastic record. I think I did some of my coolest writing on it. It was a grunge record. It was a grunge rock record. And we did this album, and we called it Too Precious. And I didn't use the name Lee Aaron. I called myself Karen.
Right.
And it was a band effort. And actually, my manager hadn't quite left at that point. We ended up with new distribution out of Toronto, which looked really promising. And I hired a big promotional rep from Toronto named Bobby Gale. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I know Bobby Gale. Yeah.
Sadly, he passed away in a tragic accident about a year ago, but I don't know if you know.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, he was hit by a truck on the highway
Oh my God.
when he ran out of gas. It was an awful story, but I don't want to go there. But anyway, so we hired Bobby Gale. He was a very notable rep. He took the songs into the biggest alternative station in Toronto called CFNY. And he played it for them. He wouldn't tell them who it was, but he said it was a Canadian supergroup. They were so excited about the music. They were ready to go on the first single. And they kept saying, who is it? They were guessing, is it Juliana Hatfield is the singer, or who, they were guessing who it was. He didn't want to do the big reveal. He wanted a commitment from them first.
Right.
So we were excited. We were like, this is going to happen. When they found out, he eventually had to break down and tell them he said, it's Lee Aaron, who's the singer. They pulled it. They wouldn't.
Oh, for God's sake.
Really?
Of perception. It was perception. Lee Aaron was part of the old guard and I was not part of the new guard. So that was really disheartening. It was really, really disheartening for me. And then, so that's how I ended up coming to the West Coast, and I ended up making this record with them. We did a couple of showcases in the Vancouver area, which were extremely well attended because those guys had such a rep out here. But yeah, the entire thing ended up dissolving. And, at that point in time, then my manager really did move to New York. And I showed up one day at my place in Vancouver and I had all these banker boxes on my doorstep. And I was like, great. I'm like $500,000 in debt. What is my plan? And that's why.
So how'd you dig out of that one? You say you went for bankruptcy. I guess that's.
Well, I was pretty depressed, honestly, at that time. It was a pretty dark period in my life and my career. And I had lots of conversations with my mother and father at that time. And my mom's an accountant. And she said, look, what are you going to do? You're going to spend the next decade of your career digging yourself out of this black hole of debt. That's not exactly inspiring or motivated to create music for, right? Or she says, you can just go bankrupt and start all over again. You can do it. And I'm like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. And so it was really my mom, again, who was an accountant, that said, go bankrupt. And it
seems like an obvious option. In retrospect, it seems like an obvious thing to do. It really does. It
was the best thing I ever did. Honestly, It was so nice to start with a clean slate. And then that's when I took a year off to lick my wounds, and no, I didn't really play at all. And when I came back, I was like, I'm not getting on to the pop culture horse again. Thank you very much. And that's why I started singing jazz.
And so you record, you have a Pro Tools rig, do you?
I have Logic.
And so is it in your home, or do you have it? Yeah. And so do you and John work out of your house writing and stuff, or is it you the principal writer? Does John write with you, or?
The music side, right now in my band, there's Dave Reimer, Sean Kelly, myself, and John. And, you know, we've written different ways since 2016. After my kids were old enough, I took a decade off to just be a mom, really. I didn't do any recording during that time. But in 2016, I released another rock record. 2018, I put out another one. 2019, I put out a live album.
I've been aware of all that stuff because I work with Dave on a regular basis. So
right,
I'm on top of that stuff.
We put out a little Christmas record this year as well. I don't know if you know.
Yeah.
So we put out 4 albums in the last 4 years. You know, John and I write, Dave and I write. I'm sorry, Sean and I write, Dave and I write. The last album that we did, which is coming out in 2021, I just signed a record deal for this new album, which is coming out 2021.
Oh, congratulations.
Album,
wow.
We, which by the way, I gotta tell you some more stuff about it, but my idea for that album was we get together in a room, we all bring our A game, we bring our best 3 or 4 song ideas, and we spent a weekend developing material. And by the end of the weekend, we literally had an album. All of the nuanced lyric content wasn't finished, but I definitely had chorus lines and I had melodies, and I just stepped up to that mic and sang, and that's what became the new record. Now we started, and so on that particular project, we're sharing writer's share equally across the band, right? It hasn't been that way in the past. I mean, some of the songs on my 2016 album are just me. Some of them are me and Sean Kelly co-writes. Some of them are me and Dave Reimer co-writes. But because we developed all the material in a room together for this latest album, and you know, nobody's making money off records anymore. The way I figure, it doesn't really matter who brings in the idea. If we work it up as a band, you know, it's part of our band sound. I feel that the band deserves equal co-writes on the stuff. What motivation do they have to be in my band otherwise, right?
Correct.
So, so that's how we're doing things these days. But the new record, we went into the studio right when COVID hit. So it was all crazy and weird because we're all like sanitizing and trying to stay behind the counter when they're working on, it was weird. It was that week in mid-March when COVID was developing hour by hour in the news.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up having to bring those tracks back and finish the entire record remotely. So we all decided that we would all get on the same platform, which was Logic, and we just shared files back and forth. And then Mike Fraser mixed it.
Oh, great. Mike was just on our show.
He's incredible.
Yes,
I love that man.
Yeah, he is. He's got the gift, that guy. It's a Midas touch. He really certainly does, you know. No, you actually you delved into something I was going to ask you, but so obviously with you, it's the music first and then the lyrics when you're writing.
No, not always.
Because I was going to ask you, is there ever a time when it's the lyrics first and then you put the music to the lyrics?
I wouldn't say all of the lyrics, but sometimes I'll write poetry. Like for instance, before we wrote this last album, I'd been on a Mexican vacation for a couple of weeks before we brought everyone in to do this. I'd been on with the family and spent a lot of time lounging around the beach. So I always have a lyric book with me. And I had written, I'd written tons of ideas. Some of them were just like a few lines. Some of them were complete bodies of work. But I'm always writing in a lyric book. And when we got together as a band to work up this material, I'd flip through my book and I'd go, oh, I have something that's going to work here, you know? Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times it's, I'm able to take pieces of information, thoughts that I've written, and put them into the music. Mm-hmm. And with revisions, like obviously phrasing revisions and things like that. So, a lot of the times they just magically work together. So I don't have one particular way of writing songs. I'm just always writing words and I'm always writing music ideas.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I had an opportunity to do an album. It was actually one of the first albums I ever did out of my studio with Lori Paul. Do you know Lori?
Lori Paul.
Yeah, she's a great singer out of Vancouver, but I think when she really made her mark was before you had moved out here. She was sort of a jazzy kind of songstress, torchy, great singer. But we had known each other for a time. We decided to do this album together, and she was one of those people. She was taking a creative writing course at the time, so I would come up with these musical ideas, and she would fit her lyrics into them and stuff. And it was an interesting thing for me because lyrics have always been something I have to work, and I struggle so much to get content. It drives me crazy because you don't want something that's going to be monsoon in June, of course, but it's a real difficult thing for me. Music comes like that. But in a situation like that, where she would have lyrics, you could sort of almost look at the lyric and you almost feel like the way Elton John does with Bernie Taupin, where, there's the big story with Elton John, apparently with the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road album. He would get to the studio early in the morning. You probably know this story, but it's probably good enough for people to hear again. He would get to the studio early in the morning with Bernie's lyrics. He would look at it. And he said if it took longer than half an hour, he'd scrap the idea and move on to the next lyric.
John and I were just having this discussion a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know. And so he'd write the song in the morning, and the band would get there, and he'd teach the band the song, and they'd record it. And the next day it'd be the next song. They would do beginning to end each song. It was just from inception, from a lyric sheet to a finished track every day. That's how they did the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road album. Unbelievable.
Again, my experience of not sending files back and forth for writing, of just putting the band together in a room and saying, okay, just bring your best ideas and working them up on the spot. With the new album we just did, I really think that there's so much value and magic in doing that because you don't have too much time to overthink it, And it was a producer that John and I were talking about just recently. And then his name escapes me, but his methodology too was he would bring the band in. He'd go, okay, just play the song 5 times through and then go take a coffee break. He did not believe in that, the sort of like, okay, you can, just, it's a little slow or a little fast. He believed that if you didn't get that magic in the first 5 takes, that you had to give the band a break and get their mind out of that place of worrying too much about what they were playing. Because I know that feeling of being in the studio and going where you're just like, you beat something to death, it's lost its magic, right?
Well, it's all coming back. It's all coming back to that. Like, you can overthink things. And especially when you're working by yourself and you're sitting there in front of your Pro Tools or Logic, like you say, and you're listening to it, you're going, is that good enough? Is that good enough? Is that good enough? And you're over and over and over. But if you're with a group of people and you're going, and let's say you sing a passage or something, or you come up with an idea and somebody goes, wow, that's cool. Well, you've got validity there where you go, oh, okay. So you can move on. You don't have to keep thinking if that one idea is good enough or not. You've already got somebody that goes, hey, we like it. So good. So it actually frees you up to actually be more creative, I think. I can't wait for the days when I get to do that again.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Well, there's Zoom writing, I guess, but you have to worry about latency, but.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're writing again right now for a new album. I know, it's like, what else is there to do, right? So
yes, exactly.
We're writing for our 2021 album is not out yet, but our 2022 album is in its inception right now. So, it's different. Like sometimes Sean will send me a track that is fairly complete with a drum machine and stuff. And I actually prefer it when he just sits down on an acoustic guitar and just, sends me a quick idea that's just a riff or a couple of different riffs on his, like a iPhone voice memo. Because it's not, it leaves room for me to add to it. Does that make sense?
Yes, of
course. Rather than being too completed.
Of course.
So yeah, like there was something recently that I finished last week where I literally took the iPhone acoustic guitar memo and just snipped out the section that I wanted and I looped it. And then I was able to write over and like put a form in there that I heard in my head. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know, writing has taken on a bit of a different thing now as well for us, because, you know, ideally I'd love to fly Sean out and just put us in a room together and just jam ideas to write the next album. But unfortunately with COVID, that's not possible. So.
Is he still in Toronto?
Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, that's where he lives.
Oh my gosh. So it's a big commitment when you guys are getting together.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. That's wow. Yeah. You know, it's amazing because all these the technology that we have to write with today. And you know, I remember reading an article with McCartney lately, and he said we didn't set out to write these memorable pop songs. What it was is we had no tape recorders. We had to be able to remember our ideas for the next writing session. So we had to make them memorable enough for us to write to remember them. And consequently, they became very, very memorable songs.
I've never heard that before. That's amazing.
I know. It's pretty incredible, you know, because really they had no cassettes. They had no reel-to-reel. They had nothing. It's like they had to remember the song from day to day. If they don't get together for a week, you remember that song from last Tuesday? Yeah, I remember that. Well, it must be a good tune if you remember it, you know?
Exactly. Wow, that's amazing.
So you say you have a King Cavalier?
A King Charles Cavalier. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you love my little Jenny. She's a Brittany. She looks just like a King Charles.
She's a what?
She's a Brittany Spaniel.
Oh, okay.
Very, because we rescued her from Mexico, and and people, when they saw pictures, because we didn't know what she was, we knew she was some sort of Spaniel. So we got her from Mexico. So I call her our Cocker Spanish girl, you know, from Lady in the Tramp, from Lady in the Tramp. So yeah, but so everybody's saying, oh, she's a King Charles, she's a King Charles, and then we looked at Brittany's, and she just seems to be a little taller. She's such a bird dog. Oh my God. Is your King Charles, does it go after birds too?
Not so much birds. Well, we have to leash her. I mean, when we walk her, there's a few provincial parks where we can walk and we can actually take our dogs unleashed. And our golden retriever is like a little human. You go, hey, get off the boulevard, and she comes back over onto the trail. She's very smart, but our Cavalier will chase anything into the bush. That's
Jenny.
Yeah. But
that's Jenny.
Yeah. So occasionally I have a big chest freezer on my deck because for overflow food, and we'll let her out there. And sometimes if there's like a little rodent or something, she just goes insane on the deck and she won't come in. She's trying to figure out what is behind the freezer right now.
That's exactly Jenny. I don't feel alone anymore. She just goes berserk. It's like, and she's the most docile, loving, cuddly, sweet little dog. And you get her outside, and it's like Jekyll and Hyde. It's like when it comes to birds and squirrels and cats, oh my God, she's out of her mind. And once she sees one, she's in the window like, you better let go.
Yeah, we joke around. We call her our mole murderer because we you know. And then when we get those mole, you know what? I don't know what animal it is, but we've given up. It's like Groundhog Day here, because when you get the little piles of dirt that the moles are making and they're digging up, and you can't use those little bombs anymore, which were perfect. You could get rid of them because we have acreage property, and we're like, okay, go out there and do your job, you know?
Yeah. I know. The last place I had, was it moles, or there's something? I think there's the grub thing that tears up the lawn. We had that problem too. It was like, just anyway.
It's also a vole, like a mole, but it's smaller.
Oh, it's smaller than a mole?
Yeah, they're tiny.
They're big. They're like, I think it's a mole, but anyway. Where is Darla?
So what color is your Charles? I don't want to go on too long about this, but
I'm gonna get her to come over, and I can give you an in-person. Come here. Come on. Oh. Come on. Oh, come on. She's very sensitive.
Camera shot. My God. Oh, look at that. Oh, yeah. Well, oh, my goodness.
Jenny, I'd have to wake Jenny up. Come here, Jenny.
I know. It's
such a cutie. Oh, my gosh. There we go.
There's Jenny.
So cute.
I know.
Well, this one, again, we live on acreage property. So, we used to comb her ears out long and lovely the way you have. And like within a day or two of her running around in our yard, because she has no idea that she's a calendar dog, right? How about A calendar dog, you know, the ones you see in the calendar.
Oh, okay.
They're so beautiful, right?
Okay.
She's a pinup doggy. She just runs around there like a little banshee, and she would get such severe mats in her ears, and she's very sensitive, so we could never comb them out. So the last time we took her for grooming, we're like, just shave the ears off. We don't care. As long as she has no idea, she's
We've
happy.
only had Jenny we got her December 19th from Mexico.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
she doesn't speak English yet.
Look at how sweet she is. You can just tell how sweet she is. She's the most wonderful, gentle little soul.
Baby.
You know. There you go, honey.
Yeah. Well, Darla.
Good girl.
We've had Darla for 8 years.
She's looking at me like, what the hell was that all about? Yeah, she's hanging out in the studio with me today. That's a nice thing. Yeah, she's a sweetie. Anyway, so yeah, you've actually planned for albums for 2021 and 2022 already. This is amazing. I love this.
Yes.
So your creativity is definitely on fire. I guess all the 10 years of being a stay-at-home mom and really hunkering down, it's probably nice to get that release out, huh?
Well, I don't have any regrets. I mean, I always knew that I wanted to have children. I just didn't really know when, and I didn't obviously wanted to have them with the right person. So
of course, yeah.
Don was the guy, and he's a great drummer and a great father. And yes, we had our children in 2004 and 2006, and I actually toured. I put out an album called Beautiful Things. It was a jazz hybrid record, and I produced myself in 2004, and I toured up until I was 6.5 months pregnant with Angela.
Wow.
It was, we flew from we finished in Newfoundland, and I flew from Newfoundland to Vancouver. By the time I got to Vancouver, I just could not get my shoes on. I was just my feet were so swollen. I was like, that's it, I'm done. And then Angela came, and you know, I had this crazy idea, and I've said this before, that I had this crazy idea in my head, like, oh, I'm just going to have kids, and I'm just going to make them fit into my music life. And I'm just going to, like, you know, I'll just bring her on tour, you know, I'll just bring her. And, you know, and then we had a baby she was not only colicky, our first child, she screamed every time you put her in her car seat, like all the way to Safeway. And I was like, so 4 months into her life, I was an absolute train wreck. And I was like, okay, so this little human is reshaping my life for me. I really had to resign myself to the fact that motherhood was it for a while. So we just decided we were going to have another baby right away. And I did selected concerts throughout that time. So hold
it 1 sec. I got to hold on. Remember that you're going to concerts, but hold it. So you had a colicky baby who screamed all the time, and you decided to have another one?
Well,
that's incredible.
It was John's idea. Not mine. At first he always wanted to be a father his whole life as well, right? And so it was divine intervention. We met at the perfect time. Both of us we'd been in relationships before, but we'd never had biological children of our own. We really, really wanted children. And so he had always dreamed he would be a father. So when Angela came, our daughter, he was just so enamored with fatherhood and with this new little baby. 3 months in, he's just like, let's have another one. I'm like, whoa, put your ginch on back, my friend. Back on, my friend. Like, I am so not ready for this right now. He said, this is fun. I'm like, for you. It's like, but anyway, by the time he ended up persuading me. And so by the time Angela was 11 months old, I got pregnant with Jet. And he was born 19 months exactly to the day she was born.
They have the same birthday?
No, not the same. Sorry. 18 and a half months. That's right. Oh. Sorry, to the day. So she was born on June 7th. He was born on January 7th.
Oh, wow.
18 and a half months later. And
so do you find the old thing, a daddy's little girl, mommy's little boy? because I've seen that a lot. I mean, it definitely happened with my children. It was like my daughter was always daddy's little girl, and my son was always mommy's little boy. It was like that's sort of just the way it worked, you know.
I don't know that it's necessarily that way in our home. Yeah, I don't know. We really, you know, I think we had our kids when we were a little bit older as well.
Yeah.
And honestly, I really feel that, you know, I certainly am a better mother now than I would have been in my 20s or even my early 30s, right? And I think having the benefit of, you know, maturity and wisdom, you know, we really do try to orchestrate family things as much as possible. I mean, our big thing, John's big thing is film, right? So we're big film and movie fans, and we have a big, huge collection and a big screen room, and we do a lot of family movie nights.
Oh, that's
you know,
nice.
Very much into you know, classic and critically acclaimed film. Yeah.
That's the one thing I don't ever regret being a father. I do regret that I was so incredibly young when I became a father. Like I was really, really, really young, and I just didn't have the maturity that I thought I did. And you, like you say, when you're older, you're making much wiser decisions, you know. And I that's why there's a book called Conversations with God. It's a series, and I
read it in my 30s. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fabulous. I think it's in book 2, and the God in the book says that children were never meant to be raised by their parents. They were meant to be raised by their grandparents because they're the ones that have the wisdom. You know, really. Yeah. And because it's true, a parent is too busy trying to make a living, trying to do this, trying to do that. The grandparents have relaxed. They're sort of they're in a much more nurturing role than a parent is, you know. I think older parents are much better parents than young parents, generally. Not always, but generally.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I hope my kids feel the same way. You know, I know that, you know, we struggled. We weren't successful having a baby right away. We lost 3 babies. And so when Angela finally came, it was sort of like, eureka, you know, we got but I was, again, like there was a lot of things contributing to me being a nervous wreck after she was born. I'm being really candid right now. You know, I know I was, you know, I thought she might stop breathing in her sleep. And, but the first baby, you're like, you know, they drop their soother on the floor and you're like putting it in boiling water. And by the time you get to the second baby, you're like, you know, it drops on the floor. You're like, you blow it off. And
it drops in the toilet. It drops in the toilet. Who cares?
So you really, by the time Jet came along, I was a lot more relaxed and was like, okay, he's not going to die. Yeah. You know, it's like, and I love the fact that we have a big acreage property full of trees they could climb, and we could just throw them out there and sort of let them explore without much worry. So I would like to think that I wasn't a helicopter parent either, because I mean, we're in the era of that now where kids, I mean, my gosh, they're not allowed to do anything risky. And if they don't do anything risky, how can they learn how to manage themselves, right?
They're driven a block to school. I mean, good Lord, what's going on out there, you know?
Kids don't climb trees anymore. I mean, we used to climb trees, make forts, come back and you're cut, you're bruised, you're scraped. And it's like, I can't wait to go back out again.
You haven't met my granddaughters. They're hanging from trees like monkeys, those two. At least they used to. Now they're older, but
yeah.
I think
what area of town do you live in? What
roughly.
Vancouver?
It's outside Vancouver.
Oh, that's all you're going to say? Okay. So I got an idea. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Because you're talking acreage. So, you know, I know where there's some areas out there. You're definitely not going to have an acreage in Vancouver or Burnaby, that's for sure.
Well, let me tell you what's happening around us is it used to be a beautiful horse ranch across the street from my house. Mm-hmm. There's now 17 skinny little luxury homes that are like multi-story high, over 2,000 square feet, and they're 6 feet apart. So we unfortunately are being encroached upon. Yeah. But anyway, I don't want to go into details. We're managing to stay here right now. And, you know, there's nowhere that we could move at this juncture for the money they want to give us and get what we have here.
Yeah.
Where we are.
Right.
So we're staying.
Well, that was the thing, was when I met Kelly over in Victoria, we decided we were going to get married, and we went back and forth. Is she going to move to Vancouver? I had a really nice place in Coquitlam. It was a townhouse, but a beautiful townhouse on acreage, like trees and a salmon stream in the backyard, a place you never find, and amenities nearby. You could walk everywhere to get what you needed. So it had that too. And of course we're trying to figure it out, but she had way more to lose than I did. So I moved over here, and it was the best decision I ever made. But we were lucky enough that the money I had sold my house in Coquitlam for, we were able to buy a place over here on a lake for like $200,000 less and cash.
Oh, nice.
So it's like,
Nice.
like it's a whole different ball game. So it's a much nicer. You should move over to Victoria is what I'm trying to tell you.
Well, I think our kids right now, believe it or not, can walk to and from high school if they wish. That's the area we're in. The biggest obstacle, seriously, pardon me, to us moving is my husband's record collection. I don't know if you're aware, but yeah, John has been a collector for 35 years. He doesn't have any bad habits. So this is what he's chosen to spend his money on his entire life. And so we literally have almost 250,000 pieces of vinyl,
oh my gosh.
Multiple rows. It's this house, when we moved in, sorry, Scott, you wanted to ask a question?
Well, is this the same place? If memory serves, you did a thing with Cribs, was it? Several years ago? Is this the same place?
It is.
I remember seeing the albums back then.
Well, what you saw then is triple the size now.
Oh my gosh.
Because that was initially the former owners, that was believe it or not, a helicopter garage. and so John converted the helicopter garage into a music library. And then a decade ago, and this was, so our son is 15. And when we filmed Cribs, he was 10 months old. A decade ago, and this was again, John's dream. We had paid off our home, and John's dream was to blow out that garage another 1,000 square feet. So that's what we did a decade ago. And we expanded the music library, which has evolved into a CD library, a multimedia room, because we have theater seating and a projection screen in there as well. And again, I'm not saying this to be braggy. This is John's ultimate man cave, right? It's like his thing. But we also have a massive movie library. He loves owning things hard copy because he doesn't necessarily, some old movies and certainly vintage things, you can't get them high quality on TV. But you can buy a 4K DVD, Blu-ray DVD, right? So we have a massive movie library and all kinds of box sets of different directors, and it's quite geeky.
With his album collection, does he have actual real collectibles in there as well?
Oh yeah.
Because the one that comes to mind that's really hard to find because they only made 5,000 of them is a mono version of Sgt. Pepper.
I'm sure he has it.
Because they only made 5,000 of them, and then they were called back because Capitol Records told them you have to mix this in stereo, and the mono is the best version.
I'm sure that would be something he would have. He's what is called a completist. So if there's something missing from the Elvis collection, he goes on a mission to find it.
Wow.
On eBay or wherever. And when Seafox got rid of their vinyl library, well, it's at my house. when Jack Cullen got rid of his,
the Owl Prowl, yeah.
Jack Cullen's collection is in my home as well.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I was amazing. I was recently, I've been privy to reading some stuff on Jack Cullen's rock and roll past, even like when he was back in the early days of rock and roll. Like I always thought of him as somebody who played like Glenn Miller and Benny Goodman stuff, but he had a huge, like vast array of music, like tons.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Charles just put this up. By my calculations, that's about 55,000 kilos or 121,254 pounds of albums.
Well, let me tell you, when we built this room, one of the problems with this house was built by an original owner. There's some wonderful, wonderful features about it. Like we have a huge stone fireplace and a library and all kinds of things, but there's a severe lack of closet space here. So one of our ideas was when we built the 1,000-foot addition, we're like, let's put in a crawl space underneath it so we can put our crap there, right?
Right.
So that's what we did. But of course, the vinyl collection, a bunch of rows of shelves of vinyl collection went on top of it. Oh, hold on. John is here right now. I'm going to ask him, do you have the mono version of Sgt. Pepper? Yes.
I heard that. That was fast. Well, tell him I said hi. I probably haven't seen him in 22 years, but he's a wonderful guy.
I will say hi.
Yeah.
We had to have when the builder realized what was going on top of the floor, we had to put reinforcements in the crawl space underneath all of the shelving because it was too heavy. So you're talking about a lot of pounds of records. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Unbelievable. So the records are in a crawl space?
Some of them, no, they're in the big room.
Okay.
The big addition. Yes.
Wow. Unbelievable. Well, so, I mean, if one thing, like Neil Young said, Russ never sleeps. And it's a fantastic thing to say that, you're still creative all the time. Your latest stuff has been really good, by the way, because every time you do something, I get to see it or hear it from Dave. So it's really good. It's really good. You. My wife actually went to see you out at the Charlie Winspear in Sydney.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you probably never met her, but she was there. Dave would have gone up to say hi to her, of course. Because of Dave is how we met, actually.
Oh, okay. Because of Dave, you met your wife?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Cool.
Well, Dave, he's a chatty Cathy. And so what happened was I was playing on Salt Spring Island with Dave and Mark LaFrance, and Kelly and her girlfriend happened to come over to the Salt Spring Island too for a girls' getaway. They popped in to where we were playing, 8 left. But I remember going like, oh my God, what is this? I wasn't looking for a relationship. I wasn't planning on anything like that. But the next day we meet up in this park where they have a marketplace. And so I see her and I it's like the way she says she couldn't even understand me the way I was talking. I was so nervous. But I got the words out, come down, I'll buy you a drink. Well, that's fine. Mark and I leave this place. Dave stays behind because, Dave is a craftsman and he likes to look at people that built things,
Yeah.
So 2 hours later, Dave phones me, says, can you come and get me? It's a long walk. I said, sure. So he gets in the van. He says, did you see those girls that came into the club last night? I said, yeah. He says, I just had lunch with them. It was fantastic. Spent the last 2 hours with them. I went, what? Like I'm thinking to myself, no, that's mine. You can't talk to them. But anyway, so Dave had a relationship at the time. It was just he likes to talk. He's a great conversationalist.
Dave loves to make friends. I know.
Yeah. And so anyway, to make a long story short, I overheard Dave that night because I never did get a chance to talk to her. I overheard Dave say something about Facebook. So I saw Kelly's name pop up on Dave's Facebook and I went, boop. And 4 months later, I had enough courage to ask her out on a date, and we've been together ever since.
Aw, that's a great story. Wonderful.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. And it was Dave, and so we give Dave credit all the time for our relationship. Yeah, I love Dave. He's an incredible guy, and what a singer, and he's just brilliant person.
I feel so blessed to have him in the band. He's a real talent, and he's a great friend.
Yeah.
For me, what's equally as important to me at this juncture in my life, in my musical career and creativity, is to not only be working with fabulous, talented players, but to decent human beings. Like Dave's a great friend. He's a wonderful guy. I care about him. He cares about me. Same with Sean, and we're like, we joke around, we call it our band family, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's like Dave, when if I'm doing a gig with Dave, he walks in, hey Mick, how you doing? And he's genuinely wants to know how I'm doing.
Yes.
It's not just casual conversation with him. He really wants to know. And,
Yeah.
and he's a lovely, lovely guy. He truly, truly is.
Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, but thank you for this. This has been a fantastic conversation. We have so many mutual friends. That's the thing, you know.
I know it's crazy. Although, when I came out here in 95, I mean, there's still so much history. I still get lost in Vancouver. I don't know my way around everywhere yet, because I don't have a lifetime here, right? So I have 25 years under my belt here, but there's still a lot of things about Vancouver music history and a lot of the musician circles around out here that I somehow never quite got connected to because I didn't start my career out here, right? So,
right. Yeah, I can appreciate that. I can. I learned a lot of Vancouver's musical history vicariously through people that I met who lived it, but I've been here a lot longer than you have, but still, my history's in Sault Ste. Marie, the Sioux Greyhounds.
One of my former bass players still lives there, a guy named Tim Harrington. Do you know Tim Harrington?
No, I don't. No.
Oh, great bass player. He also played with Aldo Nova.
Really?
Yeah. He's from the Sioux. He still lives in the Sioux, actually.
Yeah, it's a wonderful little town. I love the Sioux. I have very, very fond memories.
Great.
But anyway, thank you so much, Lee. This has been absolutely wonderful. Great stories. Really, and thanks for sharing all this time with us.
Yeah, thank you.
How long is the actual special this whole time, or are you going to chop it up?
12 minutes. We'll do about 12 minutes.
No, we'll probably air it in its entirety, but we will actually
we've been talking for 2 hours and 20 minutes. This is great.
Well, we will have the whole thing in its entirety if people choose to watch it, but we'll have little snippets as well, little vignettes as we call them.
Well, it was so nice meeting all you guys. You guys take care.
You too.
Thanks so much, Aaron.
Tell my family they can actually walk around the house now and make noise.
That's great. Well, thank you for your time and your family's time too. And
We'd love to have you.
Once again, say hi to John for me.
We'd love to have you back at some point in the future.
Yeah, well, let me know. I'm going to have a new album coming out. Hopefully, we were talking yesterday about a May-June release date for the 2021 record. So let me know.
Awesome.
If you plan on releasing your memoirs, maybe we can have another talk once you do that.
For sure.
Yeah, it's in the, I've written 2 chapters. It's still in progress. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's an idea too, for sure.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. It'd be great to have you back. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Take care.
You guys take care.
Take care, Lee.
God bless. Have a great day.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, Lee.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. Check out our many other episodes and vignettes for more great content. And please like, share, and subscribe, and become a member at socialnrgpresents.com to access all our content and earn valuable energy points just for watching.